This is a simple example of a registration system. Have you noticed the data presented over here? It's in raw, plain English, viewable to anybody, and it's stored in the database as pure English text. That there is a bad practice, and today I'm going to show you how to fix that. Encoding, decoding, and hashing input data to be stored in the database. I am David with digitalbyte.com, and let's get started. So here is our index file for our simple registration page. To start, we're including our MySQL file, which has our connection details there in a separate file. We don't want to open that there to show everybody. Next, we have our variables. We're collecting variables using the post method for the name, address, postcode, email, and the password. We've also created a function called protect, and that there is going to be stripping and trimming our input data, so that gets rid of all the HTML tags and all the other things which can cause absolute mayhem with our system. So we've added that extra function there to help us protect our input data. This here is our validation code. So it starts and looks to see if we've submitted our registration form, clicking the submit button. If we had, it's going to go through. Do we have a name present? Do we have an address? Do we have a postcode? Do we have an email? Here I've also added some extra comments, just because I haven't added these extra functions into our basic validation system, but that's something you can maybe look at in the future if you're building one yourself. So we want to see if usually we would like to check if the email is formatted properly, to test if the domain actually exists. So we might want to ping the domain, and to see if the email exists in our database. That function, all these functions here, we would want to include after our else statement here. Next, we want to check if our passwords is there or if it's empty. If it's not there, we're going to set our variable message and say please enter a password, and we're going to say red because we want to do some basic coloring on our website. I'll show you quickly, and we want to see if it meets the criteria, and also it's best to create a retype password field as well. And then after all of that, if all that data is there, it's going to input that data into our database using the insert function. The MySQL is going to be fired off. If it's successful, it's going to give us a good message. If it fails, it's going to give us a fail message, give us a MySQL error, and we're going to color our error message box red. After all of that, we're going to echo out the message little section on our website, so the user can see if it's successful, if it's failed, what needs to be corrected. Next here we've got our HTML document, so basic styling, added some extra. So we've got a jQuery running and a table sorter just for the table at the bottom there. Here we have our registration field, so our form here for our registration, name, address, postcode, email, password, submit button. Here we have our section where it shows us the raw data from our database. So here we're just pulling raw data and looping them through and presenting them on the website there. So that's our basic website at the moment. Let me show you the process of adding a user to our database, and it will come up as a third person at the bottom here. So let's give him a name of Toyota, and this person lives on 10 Earth Street. The postcode can be 1000. Email address can be toyota@live.com, for example. And our password can be hello. So I will show you quickly. I'll get rid of the password field, click submit, and it says please enter a password, and the box is red. And let's give a password of hello. Submit. Here it says user created and entered into database, and it gives us a green box. Here we have the third person. Let's refresh our database. And here we have it. Raw data in our database. This can work. This does work. Except if somebody manages to hack into your MySQL database, finds out your username and password, manages to log in, they will have access to all your users' information. So you can have the names, where they live, postcodes, emails, passwords, and you can go in depth as well. So maybe some countries you're allowed to store credit card information. Other countries they get a little bit upset if you do that. And you can have all this type of information stored on the database unencrypted, and that can cause real chaos if you don't if someone manages to get a hold of that information. So to fix this, we're going to encrypt our data, and I'll also show you how to decrypt it so you can present it when the users log in, or if you're creating like an invoice or something like that. Alrighty, so I have to explain all the data here, the name, address, postcode, and email. We want to encrypt that because we want to decrypt it at a later stage. We want to get to that information and we want to restore it back to its original form. The password here, we want to hash the password. So a hash is a one-way type of encryption. So you encrypt it once, you can't really decrypt it the other way back. There are other methods like rainbow tables and other things like that, but there isn't really a solid way to get it back into its original form. We want to do that just because that we really don't want to decrypt the password, because when the user's trying to log in, we would hash the attempted password, and if that hashed attempted password matches the stored password, then that is the correct password. So let's go back to our file here. So the first thing I want to show you is how to hash a password. And a basic hash, we can do hash password. What we can do is set our password variable, and we can equal that to MD5 bracket password. There we go. So we can do that. That MD5 is quite an old encryption method nowadays. We recommend you don't actually use MD5 for storing it as passwords in a database and all that, just because there are huge rainbow tables and stuff like that already created, and the encryption method has been decrypted already. It's been hacked, and that's available out there for the world to see. But that's a basic way to encrypt our data. So if we want to save our page, go back to our page here, we type in another person, we'll say Dave, he lives at 14 Happy Place, postcode is 6000, and the email could be dave@live.com, and his password will be yes. Submit. And now we have a new user called Dave, lives at 14 Place, passcode 6000, but now his password is protected. And that way, when people manage to grab a hold of your database, their passwords are all protected. But the only problem is his email is still available to be taken and stolen. Postcode, address, and more importantly, his name. They can actually identify who this person is, who they are, really easily. So we don't want to do that. We want to help that person, protect them. Alrighty, to do that, we're going to be creating a few functions. So here I have pre-created some functions, but let me explain what they do. So here I've created a function called encrypt our data, decrypt our data, and I've also created a function to hash our data. So with hashing, this is a much nicer way of a much more modern way of encrypting, hashing our passwords, using a much nicer, stronger algorithm. And it's there are alternative algorithms you can also specify the PHP to use. So it's much better than using the MD5 algorithm. So here we're passing our string in, so that would be the password. String is set there. The salt is the salt is used to create the hashed password. So you'd put the salt in with. So you would have a generated salt. Put the salt into the function as well, and it uses the salt and the password, and it creates a encrypted hashed value. And to use this newer function, what we will do, we'll untag our salt. So our salt is we're salting our passwords with MD5, and we're just for it in Australia. This is really basic. You can go much in depth and advanced and create a nicer system which does a better job of protecting the data. But this is just an easy example of a much nicer system. So here our function is called hash password. We want to go to the back here, and we want to get rid of this tag here. So here we want to now use our function, so that's called hash word, and we want to pass two variables to it. So we're going to pass our password, and we want to pass over our salt. Save that. So now let's go test our function to see if it works. So now we're going to call a user called Cal. He lives at 80 Farm Street, the postcode 4000. Email address is cow@farm.com, and the password we'll type in as sheep. Submit. And there we are, users. A much stronger, nicer hashed password. But our next problem is all this information here is still available as raw text. We want to encrypt that now. Now to encrypt our data, we've created this function here called function encrypt. We're passing our string and the key, so that's the key here. Once again, a very basic key. You can make a much advanced system, but this is just a basic system here today. So we want to say our new string value. So first we start off with encrypt underscore encrypt, and that there is asking for 4 parameters. So the first one we specify is encrypt RIGNDAEL underscore 6256. That there is an encryption algorithm, and one of the best ones available out there today. That middle section there is just another way of saying AES, sort of encryption, and 256-bit. Next we want to specify our key, and that there is going to help us encrypt the data to store in the database. And next we want to specify our string that we're going to be encrypting. And lastly we want to specify the mode, the encryption operating mode. This one here, encrypt mode ECB. What that does is it takes the string and encrypts it group by group. So it takes, I think, about 5 or 6 characters, encrypts that group, goes to the next group, next group. Next we want to, around these function, we want to specify our Base64 Encode. So that takes our sort of a binary value and converts it into a sort of a text binary, so we can use it to store in a database and so on and so on. Base64 Encode. Whoop, that just took over our. So put brackets around it. Base64 Encode. And lastly, we want to specify a function called rtrim. And once again, that function there removes any nulls, tabs, new lines, vertical tabs, carriage returns, and white spaces that may be present during the encode and decode phase. And if those tabs, new lines, and so on are present, that could sort of create those sort of black diamond question marks in your decode text, and it could cause some issues. So we want to specify those that command to get rid of any of those extras that we don't need. So that there is our encode. And to use that encode function now, so now what we want to do is come down here and we want to encode our data. And to do that, nicely, we want to put double brackets just so we can specify the function. Encode encrypt, and we want to do that for all of our values except the password, because we're hashing the password. So the first one is address, postcode, and email. So we want to save that. Submit. Here we are presented with our error. So incorrect integer value for column postcode at row 1. So what we have to do here is take a look at our structure for our database, and here we are using var character, text, number, and variable character. So we want to change those types, those 4 types, to another data type which will hold our Base64 code. So here we want to change our data types to var binary. We want to change that to var binary, var binary, and var binary. Here the lengths and values we really want to change that to the exact value of our output of the encryption. So it's always going to be the same value. So we can change it to an exact value, but instead of counting today, I'm just going to write it as 100 to cheat a little bit. Save, and the table has been updated. Alrighty. So here, let us do an example again. So our example is Google, address Google Planet, 1001, Google at Hotmail, and his password was Google. Submit. And there we have it. Our new user is now created, so user number 6, his name encrypted, his address encrypted, password encrypted, email encrypted, password hashed. So now this guy is all safe. He doesn't have to worry about his data being stolen, because if it is stolen, it's pretty much useless unless they have the key to unlock it and the sort of correct function to get his actual data, original raw data back. So we've encrypted the data in our database, so we can refresh this to find our data, browse, and here it's all encrypted. Lovely. I'd like to show you how to decrypt the data to use it in invoices and other situations. So it's pretty much the same process we have done here with encryption, except it is pretty much the same thing except the other way around. So our string, our function decrypt, we're passing it a string and a key. So we want to give the value string a new value. So here we take our string. So starting from the rear of this one here, we are applying the Base64 Encode. So here we're doing the Base64 Encode, but we're going backwards. Then we're passing it through the encryption function, passing it it's the key, same algorithm and the mode, and then lastly we're passing it through the rtrim to get rid of any unnecessary values which could. So we pretty much want to make it usable, so that's why we pass it through rtrim. So there we have our decrypt, and we want to go back down to our section here, and we want to say decrypt our data, pass the row ID, and we want to pass our key. There we go. So let's save that, return to our document, refresh our page. Alrighty, so we want to get rid of the decrypt for the password because that's being hashed, and we can get rid of it for the ID as well because we want to keep that original. Also, just before we run the code, the function here, I have forgotten to put down the key, which is extremely important. I've spent maybe a good solid 5 minutes trying to work out what was going on, but thankfully I managed to work that out. Save that. Over here we can now test to see Google. For the address we'll write down Google Planet, postcode 1001, email address we can write down google@hotmail.com, and the password will be Google. Submit, and there we go. User created and entered into database. Here we have our user Google. Our code now here is visible, so now we can use this, the name, address, postcode, so on. Maybe we can create an invoice, stuff like that. We can use the email to maybe send them messages and stuff like that. But the password's still encrypted because we don't need to know what the password is. That's for them. That's for the system to use. And over in the database, when we browse our files, name, address, postcode, email, and password is all encrypted, hashed, and the data is all secure. And you don't have to worry as much about if your database is stolen or compromised. The user's information won't be as easily stolen. Anyhow, thank you for sitting and staying with me here to finish watching the tutorial here. It's very good practice to encrypt the data to use in databases. It's just you get all these things in the news about people stealing information databases and credit card information and stuff like that. So I really do recommend you do convert your systems over into using such functions to definitely protect your data and most importantly your users' data. Because that's one way to stay safe on the safe side and keep trust. Thank you for sticking with the whole video. I hope you've learned something. I am back now. It's been about 4 or so months. I have been away, just finishing off my senior years and my senior year, and starting university right now. So I'm studying engineering, and I hope I'll have enough time now to sort of maybe do every couple weeks or so about produce a new video about web development or server deployment. Thank you very much. See you next time.